received no salary or payments from Cambridge Ann, but I just wanted to put that on the record. On the proposals, generally, the business board was very supportive of them. There's a really rigorous process in place, both with the internal assessment, the external independent assessment, and then the panels when that's relevant. That's not relevant in this particular case, but business board was very supportive of all three of these.
Councillor Herbert.
I'm not sure my reputation was major, but we did give it good scrutiny at the meeting, and the three projects the process is exemplary in terms of assessment, and these are three really good projects, which will make a big difference. So I accept that this is a process I was outside of before, but I'm impressed having been inside it.
Okay. So once again, the recommendations before us were endorsed unanimously by the business board following thorough examination and debate. Thank you also for Councillor Herbert for those additional comments. Can we move to the vote? The seconder, I'm going to give that to Councillor Herbert. Okay. Those in favour, please raise your hands. So unanimous. Okay. So that's 5. Next is part 5, the governance reports, but I was wondering. Yeah, can we go to governance reports and we'll do part 2 at the end? So yes, sorry, I just thought everybody was.
I think it would be good for Resumption.
All right. Okay. Fine. That's my apologies. We're taking a 5-minute break. We'll do part 5 governance reports, and then for those who can stay, just go to those mayoral decisions in part 2. Is that it? Perfect. Well done, everyone. Thank you. Repeating.
Oh, we got those projects through at last.
At last, and I feel. 2. Can we go? Are we going to, can we go live again? Okay. So reconvening, Bridget. Okay. So we're going to move to part 5, which is governance reports. And then we'll pop back to 2. So, so we move on to part 5 of the agenda, which contains governance reports. Item 5.1 is the annual report and business plan for 2022 to 23. Nathan Bunting, Programme Coordinator, joins us to introduce the report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and good morning all, and hopefully you can hear me okay. So this is item 5.1 to seek approval of the 2022-2023 annual report and business plan. The business plan, driven by the themes of the Sustainable Growth Ambition Statement, sets out to the public and stakeholders the projects that the Combined Authority will be delivering within the next financial year. It includes projects that are budget lines within the MTFP as of January 2022 board meeting. Each year's business plan records the Combined Authority's intentions in progressing the projects that have been awarded a budget line. The business plan itself is neither a new budget decision nor a gateway decision, both of which are reserved to the board as separate decisions based on value for money criteria. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Obviously, I'm delighted with the report, and I'm very proud of the work that we've done, and you particularly. So I'm happy to move these recommendations from the chair. I would need a seconder. Councillor Nissinger. So comments and questions from the board. Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, just a couple, thank you. I note that I think there's been 1 or 2 updates to this draft since the last time, just pragmatic updates, which are fine. But I did wonder whether we should, as a board, request that before it's sort of finally wrapped up and published, we get an update on page 417 of our pack to the bus service improvement plan stuff, just to recognise that we've now, we're trying to get feedback from government about why we didn't get awarded any funding, and we're having a review internally about what to do about that, because it just sits there saying we've submitted a bid for bus service improvement work, and obviously we didn't get any money for that. So I think it'd be helpful to update that and just delegate to officers an update on that. So it's an up-to-date business plan that we're publishing, and I remain hopeful but sceptical about the role of demand responsive transport, but I won't rehearse it again now because I've articulated it in previous meetings. And really just to recognise that I think we've all acknowledged that we had a very difficult budget process setting system this last year, and I think the lateness of this is perhaps a reflection of that, and I hope I feel we should be in budget setting mode to try and get ahead so we don't get into the same mess next year. So I'm looking forward very urgently now to hearing about next year's budget so that we're not in the same mess again, because we were just box ticking a huge number of just sort of individual projects that didn't feel like it was a coherent strategy, and I think there's a lot of work to do. So I'm going to support this today, but I do hope the board will agree that it needs an update to the BSIP commentary.
Yes, Councillor Bailey, I'm just looking at it now, and yeah, the sort of the timings, and it just needs to be tidied up. I'm well aware of obviously the response we got, but I'm also very much aware of the challenge that I've made as mayor, and to the department and to the team there, that they're already on another level of analysis and improvement on that thing. So yeah, I'm sure we can.
So if we just reflect that in the commentary, I think that'd be
delegate the responsibility to the team to go, and then we can just maybe we'll even share it with you as well, Councillor Bailey. Just before you. Okay, no, fine, but it seems it's a good idea. Is that okay, Nathan? Are you clear with that? We'll just make a slight moderation to that in conjunction with our colleagues in transport, and then let's get it out there. Oh, sorry, jumping ahead, Lucy.
It's fine. I think it was just to say that it's always going to be a problem with an annual report, that it's kind of a snapshot in time and things move on, and there's absolutely no question that the bus situation is moving on a daily basis and it's something that I think I am certainly extremely concerned about and involved in. But I think we sort of have to recognise that this is an annual report that reflected where we were a little while ago. And whenever you take it, it's going to have bits of it that have changed in the meantime. I think Anna's point about the fact that we need to get on with thinking about next year's budget right now is absolutely right. And I'm sure that we will all take that on board and make sure that we are making good progress on a smoother budget process this year. Thank you.
Just coming on.
Yeah,
And just to provide some reassurance there, yes, I think I know John, our finance director, is looking to kick off the budgeting process this side of the summer holidays.
Okay. So I think we're ready to move to the vote. Okay. Those in favour of accepting Nathan's reports, recommendations, approve the 2022 to 2023 annual report and business plan. Those in favour? That's unanimous. Nathan, long time in coming, but very much worthwhile. Thank you for all the hard work you did. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Item 5.2 is the report of the independent remuneration panel. I had a conversation with some board members and particularly my deputies before this. My proposal would be is acknowledging we've got a lot of things happening within the combined authority, and there's an element of remuneration is sometimes about a measurement of where you're at as in terms of your performance. So my suggestion, bearing in mind the various challenges we've had recently, is that we actually don't change anything at the moment. This report to come back once the incoming CEO has had time to sort of work with officers, work with myself before any suggestion of enhanced remuneration for the mayoral role is discussed. So I was going to suggest that, if that's okay, to pull this paper today with a view to bringing it back with following discussion once the interim CEO is here.
Are we debating that as a proposal, or what are we doing?
I'm able to remove it from the, is that okay? I'm just removing it from the agenda. So moving on to 5.3, the audit and governance report. So for this, I am very pleased to welcome John Pye, the independent chair of the Audit and Governance Committee, to introduce the report. The Deputy Monitoring Officer is also available to answer any questions if required. I would remind the board that Mr. Pye joins us today to discuss the Audit and Governance Committee report for 2021 to 2022 only, and that it would not be appropriate for board members to ask any questions or offer comment on any information not contained in that report. John.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did watch you all playing with these machines earlier, and I thought I'd mastered the technique. Thank you very much, and thank you for that clarification. This is putting on record the report of last year's work of the Ordnance and Governance Committee, which I think is my 5th year. I think there was the more engaged membership in the last year than we've had hitherto, which made the debates much more valuable. On the other hand, we were disrupted a couple of times by lack of quoracy and the technology, like pressing the right button, letting us down. It was interesting to me because it's always been in my mind that the Audit and Governance Committee is somewhat distanced from the business of the combined authority, which makes understanding the texture of what is happening more distant. And I was pleased that members felt that we ought to do more, concluded this year that we ought to do more in trying to find a way of understanding what is happening within the combined authority more closely than we've done hitherto. Also, good audit and governance is not helped because whilst this is a report of last year, when we move into our first meeting for the new year, half the committee will have changed. And I just think we need to bear that in mind when we look forward. On the particular business, it was straightforward. Risk has not developed in the way that we thought it might. And we know that the combined authority was looking at its risk arrangements fundamentally, and they didn't quite come to fruition by the end of the year. So they're on our list for looking at in the future. We wrestled with trying to understand trading companies and the relationship between the combined authority and the companies. And we will continue to work on that. Although there's nothing untoward to report in last year's business, and I'm grateful to the officers for their openness in supporting the committee and responding to all our questions. The purpose of today is to note the report and provide any feedback to audit and governance. Thank you.
Thank you. So are there any questions or comments from members of the board? Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, John, and to the committee, the Audit and Governance Committee, for your report and your work. And thank you for the work that you undertook into the Cam Metro and the way that the decisions were taken around Cam Metro. That was a huge piece of work with a massive amount of documents and background in it. So thank you for what you did. One of the things that was shown up by trying to refer that item to the Audit and Governance Committee was that there was a lack of a process in terms of how to refer things to Audit and Governance Committee, and it caused some hiccups and some delays along the way as far from where I was sitting. And I wondered if that was something that was being addressed, and I didn't see it as part of the sort of feedback. I don't remember seeing reference to that as a problem.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor. Yes, this issue did raise this question of what was the formal access into the Audit and Governance Committee. We don't want it a free shooting range, but we need to make it. So as a result of that learning from the CAM, our terms of reference have been amended and the Constitution has been amended. So there is now a clear process. If you ask me on the detail, we'll have to follow it up.
Was that part of the Constitution update that's already been made, or is that still to come?
Yeah, sorry.
Sure, perhaps we can invest.
I will double check and get back to you. Yeah.
Questions for our Chair of Audit and Governance? Okay, well, Councillor Singer.
A very quick question. This is a backward-looking report, kind of on the previous year. So I hope it's not inappropriate to ask you a forward-looking question. But I think that the Audit and Governance Committee is going to have a fair amount of work to do in the coming year. I just wondered whether you felt you had adequate resources to do that work.
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I've sensed this pressure that officers have been under in the last year in providing input to us in the time that we required, and I've taken as chair a view of always to be a flexible approach to timelines, because it's more important that we get proper advice than the timeliness of it. You're quite right. When looking ahead, it's something we need to bear very much in mind, and I know that officers will do that. But I do think it's incumbent on yourselves as the collective that in charge of the combined authority to recognise those difficulties that we might face. So I'm grateful for the question.
Yeah, follow up from.
Thank you. I think it's important for us as a board to recognise that it is important that you have the resources that you need to do the work that you need to do. And just as we should take very seriously the capacity of the board to deliver its work, I think we also need to take seriously the capacity of our audit and governance and scrutiny committees to do their job as well. And we should perhaps make a request that the incoming chief executive look at that element of staffing as well as other areas. Thank you.
Councillor Netzinger, you've taken away exactly what I wanted to say, but thank you. So the item was for noting only, so no vote is actually required. But before you leave, John, I'd just like to place on record the board's thanks to yourself, Mr. Pye, and to all the members of the Audit and Governance Committee for their diligence and commitment in discharging this key role. We've already mentioned it was backwards looking. I do not think it was inappropriate to be forward looking, Councillor Netzinger, and the very fact that you highlighted the importance of your work for the whole of our organisation is not lost on me, let alone the board. So please be very liberal in your contacts with me directly and with the incoming interim CEO to make sure that should there be any challenges, you have the exact resources in all manner to make sure you can discharge your duties appropriately.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Right, item 5.4 is the Overview and Scrutiny Committee's annual report for 21 to 22. Councillor Lorna Dupre, the committee chair, had a meeting clash. She was unfortunately unable to join us today, but in her absence, I will ask Jodie Townsend to introduce the report.
Yeah, so the report requests that the board note to provide feedback on the annual report of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which is the work carried out by the committee over the 21-22 municipal year. Also attached at Appendix 2 is the CA board received the CFGS report in September 21 and requested that the committee report back on progress and the committee provide the board with their view on how the review has helped the committee to add value to the combined authority and improve the way in which the committee carries out its work. As a result, the board is asked to note the annual report of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and note the committee's feedback on the CFGS review from 2021.
I'm moving that recommendation to approve. Sorry, sort of jumped ahead here. Open the report to comments and questions from the board. Oh, sorry, are you in just in time?
So for future reference, would it be appropriate for, so I, as lead member for climate and environment, attended a scrutiny meeting, and it was a real pleasure to do it. Got a reasonably hard grilling, but that's what you expect. I wonder if we could be looking at more engagement from the board members, particularly with those with specific responsibilities with scrutiny and overview, because I think it was very beneficial both ways.
Well, every day is a learning day, and so if that's, I'm sure the overview and scrutiny. Do you have any? You're asked to speak on behalf of Councillor Dupre.
Yeah, it's something we obviously take back to the committee, and that advice of wider accountability within combined authority setting is something being given by Centre for Governance and Scrutiny to combined authority scrutiny committees. So we'll take that away and have a conversation.
And I would add, obviously, I obviously have gone to the committees myself, but I would welcome the idea that it's not just about the mayor being scrutinised. It's us. It's we, the board. We, the combined authority, that should be scrutinised. So yes,
Let's put for another meeting, of course.
Right. So as I say, it was for noting only. No vote is required. And before we move on, I'd like to thank Councillor Dupre and the Vice Chair of the committee, Councillor Alan Sharp, and indeed all of the members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on behalf of the board for the constructive challenge which they have provided during the period covered by the report. It's not an easy role, but it is a vitally important one, and they have our sincere thanks. Thank you. Item 5.5 is the Combined Authorities calendar of meetings for 22 to 23. Unless there are any questions or proposed, we move straight to the vote. I seem to recall we made sure that we tried to avoid any obvious clashes with school holidays, making it as accessible as possible. So assuming everybody wants to move on, I'm going to move the recommendation to the 2022 to 2023 meetings calendar from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Herbert. So those in favour. Sorry, those in favour. Sorry. Cool. Okay, unanimous. Right, the final thought should be 5.6, the forward plan. But before we do that, it's just for the record, we need to go back to the mayoral decisions, which were initially at the start of this meeting. These, and I will just get my introduction to put them. Item 2.1. So, well, I haven't done. I've got 2.1. So, and then it's the mayoral decision. Yeah. So, part 2 of the agenda relates to mayoral decisions, and item 2.1 is the local highways maintenance grant allocation for 22 to 23. And John Alsop, as the Chief Finance Officer, you're here to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mayor. So this report sets out the proposal to split the local highways maintenance capital funds as received by the combined authority for 2022-23 between the two highways or authorities as set out in the table underneath paragraph 2.3. Of the total of 27.695 million received, 21.955 million would be passported to the County Council and 5.74 million to Peterborough City Council. Splits have been based on previous year's allocations that are the same as last year, which is in turn is based on government formula. It's a mayoral decision, but needs to be in consultation with the board. Just a point in terms of assurance, in terms of public accountability of the use of this funding. These are provided by the County Council and Peterborough City Council through the grant conditions, which need to be complied with in terms of the use of those funds, and those are signed off by our internal auditors. And also the maintenance programs are monitored by each of the highways agencies. So for example, in the County Council, their Highways and Transport Committee receive regular reports on KPIs and performance against priorities based on highways operational standards, which guide priority interventions. So happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, report for discussion. Councillor Netzinger.
So this is obviously a very important item for me. And I just wondered whether John could confirm that I think this is either flat cash or a slight reduction on last year's. I'm going to carry on. I've got a few questions, so hang on. So it would be helpful to have some clarification on how this compares with previous years' allocations. Road maintenance is obviously a huge issue for the County Council, and with inflation running at the level it is, and inflation in construction and highways maintenance type costs is well above standard inflation. So actually having the extent to which this grant is going to go less far than it has done in previous years is going to be very significant. And I think it's very important that everybody around this table is aware of that. I'm just looking at the way in which the government hands out the money, and particularly the incentive funding for councils who demonstrate they're delivering value for money. Maintaining our fen roads is a nightmare. They are very expensive to maintain. They shift and move. And I think it is really crucial for us to be making sure that we are making clear to government that actually different places have different costs in terms of the maintenance of their roads, and Cambridgeshire's roads, and particularly the roads in the sort of the fen area where what the roads are built on is not the same as it is in most of the rest of the country, is a huge problem for us, and that it's important that that is recognised in the expectations that people have around the cost of maintenance. So I'm basically saying we have a really difficult job. Please recognise it, and the more we can make that case clear to government, the better. Thank you.
Do you want to come back on?
I think it was, excuse me, just one question in there in terms of whether it's flat cash or reduction. It's my understanding, well, it's the same as last year. There's exactly the same allocation, and the same allocation to the area has already been published by the DfT, which stretches out to 25, 26. So your point about inflation will only make matters of more of a concern, I should imagine. But yeah, it's a message that does need to be fed back to central government.
It's a message that needs to go back not just to central government, but also to our population, because they're not going to see the same level of improvement in their roads as they would like. I mean, our roads have been deteriorating year on year for a long time. And I think what needs to be made clear is that the funding that we're getting from government is not going to stop that deterioration. And we do have to think really hard about what we do about our roads.
Thank you. I can't see any more indications for discussion. So as this is a mayoral decision, no vote is required. And having listened to the board's comments, particularly yours, Councillor Netzinger, although I recognise the challenges, we are where we are. So I have to be willing to approve the allocation of what we've got at the moment of the local highways maintenance grants to both Cambridgeshire County Council and Peterborough City Council as set out in the report. Thank you. And then we're now going to move on to item 2.2, which I think probably have to thank Councillor Bailey for these. So thank you, Councillor Bailey, for highlighting the importance that all mayoral decisions should be documented. But in the having challenge to make sure that we had everything up to date, we discovered from a governance point of view, there were two historic decisions taken by the previous mayor which were not reported to the board at the time. These are the MDN 24 to 2020, which related to the X3 bus service between Huntingdon and Addenbrooks, and the mayoral decision notice 32 2021, which provided for a change to the officer delegated authority under mayoral decision notice 28 on the 2020. Sorry, it's a bit wordy, but Jodie Townsend, our Deputy Monitoring Officer, will introduce that report.
Thank you. So this is to provide the board with an update on MDNs as per the request from back in March at the board meeting. The monitoring officer undertook to check that all mayoral decision notices have been reported to the Combined Authority Board. I would just add, since then, we have also identified a way to make sure we get immediate alerts to our scrutiny committee once those notices are issued, which again was an area for improvement in our process. And we will continue to look at that process to see if there are further areas we can improve on moving forward. Thank you.
Any questions or comments?
I just wanted to say thank you to Rob Parkin and to Jodie, who I know has picked it up since for sorting out this problem with our process.
Okay. In that case, we'll take these two decisions as notice, and that is noted, which then leads us to now jump to the end of our papers, and which was, I believe, the 5.6, the forward plan. Right. It's an annotated forward plan. Oh, sorry, do you want to come in? Councillor Herbert.
There was just one point in that in an earlier iteration, I'd seen that there was the report on climate and strategy business cases on the July agenda as well. So, and that seemed to have dropped off, but it may have been put back in because I did email Mr.
So
Rhodes.
can I just introduce? So the forward plan is updated regularly and published on the Combined Authority website. Can I just finish those? There is one item on the forward plan which I want to draw to the board's attention. A mayoral key decision will be taken on or after the 28th of June on Recycle Local Growth Fund project funding awards. I will be taking the decision on the advice of the business board following the extraordinary meeting on the 24th of June 2022, and it will be formally reported to this board at our meeting on the 27th of July for noting, in accordance with the arrangements set out in the Constitution. I consulted leaders informally on the published proposals at our strategy meeting on the 22nd of June to inform my decision, and they were unanimously content to endorse them. So are there any questions on the forward plan? So
that was just my other point, which, sorry I interrupted you.
Yeah.
That there was earlier a plan to take a further report on climate and strategy business cases, subject to how officers are getting on with the range of.
Sorry, I'll let Paul Rains come in.
And Councillor Herbert, I think you're right. So there are some business cases which are being slipped to July. I had understood that was recorded in some way in the forward plan. I can't see it, but that is the substantive
I
position.
looked hard, and I would have liked to have found it like you would have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the question. So the challenge to us is what they're going to do about it.
Well, Jody, we just need to make sure the amendment is made, don't we?
Yeah, but we would take that away and update accordingly.
Okay, fine. And Councillor Bridget Smith.
Thank you. So two items. I think we need to be penciling in a discussion about pan-regional partnerships once there's been feedback from the proposal that is being submitted to government at the moment. So I think we need that on our forward plan. And the other thing that I'd like us to discuss, and Professor Neely and I have had a little bit of toing and froing in the last sort of 24 hours about this, is I am not, and it's been highlighted by the discussions about a pan-regional partnership, I'm not sure whether our business board is a LEP or whether it's a growth board. So I think we need to sort of clarify that, because they are quite different, particularly when you look at the membership. So if we look at the OxLEP, which is the Oxfordshire LEP, that has very large membership, but it has all the council leaders on it as well. When you look at the Oxfordshire Partnership, which is their growth board, that membership is just all the council leaders. So I Googled it all last night. Okay, yes, okay. So that's the situation there. So I think, particularly if we're talking about pan-regional partnerships, it's really important to have sort of consistency, particularly at our bookends. And I think we need clarity over whether we are a growth board, because the funding for a pan-regional partnership is going to be expected to come from growth boards. So I think there's. And obviously it's kind of over to Professor Neely and the business board about how they deal with this. But, you know, I've been aware for quite a long time, and I wrote a number of letters to the previous mayor about the lack of democratic representation on our, whatever it is. You know, it's very, very out of kilter. I Googled all the other LEPs around our region last night, and all the council leaders are on all of them. You know, it's very, very unusual here that there's only the mayor and the mayor's deputy, and that's possibly something that we need just to discuss.
Professor Neely, do you want to come in?
So very happy to discuss that at one of these meetings. I mean, I think the point that Councillor Smith makes, particularly about the distinction between the growth board and the LEP, is really important. So my understanding of it is the business board is effectively our LEP. I mean, that's the way we've described it. That other regions have separate growth boards, that central government sometimes gets a bit confused about this end of the pan-regional partnership, and whether the growth board is effectively the combined authority board or the growth board is the business board, and we should just resolve that.
Okay, I've just had a note, but so I think there was the understanding, and I wasn't here as long as others have been here, but that the Ox Camargue was that from the Ox Camargue was that the combined authority was the growth board. We were the growth board, you know. If that should stay like that, and how we should be looking at it, we obviously have a vacancy as the chair for the post of the business board, an opportunity with obviously a new sustainable growth ambition statement and a lot of information we've discussed today. So if the proposal as part of the forward plan is that we bring papers, lead a strategy meeting, and then to ourselves to see how we position ourselves or where we go forward, I absolutely would be in support of that. Do I need to do anything more with regard to that? Is that just noted? And thank you for bringing that as a suggestion. This is what it's there for, a format for open ideas to what we could be discussing in the forward plan. But as it stands, with the thing is that I'm moving the recommendation to approve what we've got in front of us as the forward plan from the chair. I'm happy if my seconder, my deputy, is happy to go with that, with the noted that we need to update something. So I will take it that the forward plan is approved. Sorry. Right. I will take it for that the forward plan is approved unanimously unless anyone indicates otherwise now. So a unanimous acceptance of the forward.
Quietly unanimous.
Quietly unanimous. So I believe the next board meeting is due for Wednesday, the 27th of July. We're smiling, Shenda, which is okay. But I now declare this meeting closed. Thank you for everybody's participation. Thank you.